Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Alfa Romeo Driver Podcast, brought to you by the Alfa Romeo Owners Club. I'm Guy Swarbrick, and this week I'm delighted to have with me fifth gear presenter, podcaster, YouTuber, and racing driver Vicki Butler-Henderson. Good afternoon, Vicki.
Good afternoon to you.
We'll talk a little bit about some Alfa-related things later on, but I just wanted to start off talking about your career. There's a kind of family inevitability about where you ended up, isn't there?
I always say that if my parents had been into golf, I would have led a very, very different life. But fortunately for me, my father was in the British karting team when he was a teenager, and his father before him had also done some racing in a Fraser Nash, most notably at Brooklands racing circuit. And I just think and everyone of that era was such a hero because they were going around Brooklands at terrific speeds with potentially a leather bit of bit of a leather hat on and being so close to the trees and
Yeah.
very, very little safety gear. Anyway, so my father, he's also a farmer, and he had his old cart chassis sort of tucked away in the back of a barn somewhere, and I sniffed it out, and Dad put a lawnmower engine on it, and I just used to go up and down the farm lane. And eventually I was like, do you know what, Dad, I really enjoy this. Can we try proper racing? And then that's when it all started. So I had my first kart race when I was 12 years old.
And your brother raced as well. So did he copy you if you found the kart?
Yes, so he's a bit younger than me. So I
Right.
remember sort of teaching him as well how to drive and how to steer, driving anything we could get our hands on, a van, a tractor, anything, and stubble fields in summertime are perfect testing grounds.
There's been a lot of talk over the last couple of years about things like the W Series and whether that should be necessary and the role it plays. How hard was it coming up through racing in what was, I guess, then even more so a man's world?
I'm really glad you brought that point up, and I want to talk about the W Series and women in general. But when I was racing, it didn't occur to me that I was a girl. It absolutely did not matter. I put my helmet on. I was just another person on a grid, and I've always believed that. Sadly, though, about 2% of girls were racing when I was racing age 12, and the numbers are still pretty small. So, but thinking about a W Series, which is the all-woman racing series, I mean, fundamentally, I think motorsport is fantastic because, like horse racing, we women compete against men on equal terms, and I absolutely love that fact, and that is should never ever change. However, the W Series is kind of like, it gives women a safety net, and in a way I wish it had been around when I was forced to leave motorsport because I couldn't fund another year of it. And if W Series had been around then, I would definitely have fallen into their catchment, and where they give women free racing for a year. So in that respect, it would have prolonged my racing, my racing ambition. And potentially, if I'd have done W Series for a year, the next year I might have been able to, get funding to then progress to my dream, which was to race in Formula One.
So it's kind of a shame that it has to be there, but a good thing that it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because fundamentally, every woman I know wants to race, full stop, and the world we know is racing against men.
So the racing career ended, but you didn't stop driving professionally at that point.
No, exactly. Well, my racing dream finished. I still race and I still have a competition license today, and I'll do 1 or 2 races a year, which is great and just for a bit of fun. But my love of cars, it drew me then onto car magazines, and I was just very fortunate to manage to combine I always loved writing when I was at school, and I did English A level and thought one day I'd love to be a writer. And then that one day came quite quickly, having a conversation with somebody at a publishing house, and very quickly I got a job as an editorial assistant on Car Mechanics magazine, which was part of the big EMAP empire, which it was known then. And they had all sorts of magazines, performance car, street machine, practical classics, which I eventually was a staff writer on for a year on that. And we launched Max Power magazine as well, which was a huge modified car mag in the 90s.
Yeah, it's very much a magazine of the 90s, wasn't it, Max Power?
Yeah, it was definitely. I
Was
was
that
on
good
it.
fun?
Oh my gosh, we had such a laugh. So there were two of us, myself and a guy called Graham Steed, who was the launch editor, and he and I worked away in an office for about 6 to 8 months, something like that, just coming up with the content for the first magazine. And then eventually we launched, and then I stayed on the magazine as staff writer for 1 year. And then when I left, then it turned into a slightly different magazine.
Because you weren't there to constrain it anymore.
Probably. Yeah. But then after Max Power magazine, I then got my dream job, which was to be a road tester. So I was a road tester on one of EMAP's weekly car magazines then. So it worked well.
And how long was it before you made the move into television?
So I think I had, after being a road tester on this car magazine, I then became a road tester at Auto Express magazine, and then became a road tester and news editor at What Car magazine. And it was during my time at What Car, so in my mid-20s, that I got a call and just said, would you be interested in doing a TV item for Top Gear? So I was said, yes, you've clearly hit the bottom of the barrel. You've scraped hard, and here I am. So I did, and the first item I did for Top Gear was a race, which was very fitting, and it was in the Slick 50 Racing Championship. I drove a Mark II Golf GTI and raced that and spoke about it, and had an utter ball. And they asked me back.
Yeah. So was that a one-off, or was that the start of a permanent gig on Top Gear?
It was the start of a semi-permanent gig, I would say, because I still had a job. I was still writing and working on various magazines. But the more I became employed by Top Gear to do films, the less time I had to focus on the main job of being a journalist. So I went freelance in the end, and have not worked in an office-based environment since sort of my late 20s, really, which was sad, because I really miss office banter, and I know everybody will. We've all suffered from not being in an office and being around banter, but that's the one thing that I do miss. It's just camaraderie, really, and Mickey taking.
Yeah. And how long did the Top Gear thing last before Top Gear was fundamentally shaken up? And
So I think I did about 4 years on Top Gear, and then there was a woman at the head of BBC Two who wasn't a fan of cars and said, right, that's it, no more Top Gear. So Channel 5 then called the people who were still doing Top Gear, because by that time Jeremy Clarkson had left. He was doing a chat show. So Channel 5 employed the likes of me, Quentin Wilson, Tiffany Dale. So we all went to Channel 5 to make Fifth Gear, which is still running. It sort of has a little rest now and again, just to, pack its bag and refresh. But hopefully we will be filming again later on in the year. And that's been going now for 20 years, something like that, which is ridiculous. And then a couple of years after we had done Fifth Gear, then Top Gear came back again in the three-man format that we all know it now.
and they had a little bit of banter between the two crews at one point, didn't they? I think they blamed you for burning down
Yes, that's
a
right.
barn or something.
Yes.
Well, not you personally.
No, yeah, exactly. But I mean, you know that the car industry, or whatever industry you're in, is always quite small, and somebody will always know someone, or whether you're in the printing industry or the art world. So everyone knows everyone. So Mickey taking is great, and we love it.
But it's good to hear it was coming back, because I think it was back end of 2019, wasn't it? The last episode of Fifth Gear.
Yes, yeah, we've done some stuff on the YouTube channel for Fifth Gear in the meantime, but yeah, we fits and starts, so we're never fully hanging up our boots on that one.
And any highlights in the 20 years at Fifth Gear?
I think, yes, I drove a Porsche Boxster on an airfield, and I was racing a Breitling jet, and I had to take off at a certain point. We were in walkie-talkie contact with the pilot, and he came over, and as he came over my head, I had the roof down on my car. Honestly, if I'd have put my hand up, I would have been able to touch the bottom of his jet. I mean, just breathtaking. The noise, the sounds, stuff like that was thrilling. Really, that was amazing. Meeting loads of people. Off-roading is not my forte, shall we say. So the boys, Jason Plato and Tiffany Dale, have always loved having a giggle with me when I go off-roading. But I think it's because when I'm going really slowly and I'm going up a hill and it's not quite got the momentum to get me up there, and I know I'm going to have to slug it back down in reverse, things like that I don't appreciate off-road. But if you add some speed, add a jump, then I'm all over it. So anything to do with off-roading and the boys laughing, yeah, that's been a highlight too.
And in the gap between, you've started your own YouTube channel.
I have, yes. I mean, as if I've not got enough on my plate with 2 children and lots of writing and podcasts and stuff like that. So I've started a YouTube channel very recently, and it's called The Car Girl Vicki Butler-Henderson. I mean, I literally couldn't come up with any more words, really. And so far, we've had a track test of a Ferrari F8 Tributo. So that was 2 of my launch films. Then I've done a Toyota Yaris, GR Yaris little hot hatch, and then a Ford Mustang Mach-E. And I've got all sorts of lovely, wonderful things forthcoming. Lamborghinis, Ford Ranger Raptor trucks, you know, good, honest cars, and some luxury super ones as well.
And there's a huge amount of content on YouTube about cars, of let's say variable quality. Is there a particular niche you're aiming for?
I just wanted to be able to share my passion and for cars, and also to be able to bring together all my, you know, road testing and car journalism that I've accrued over the years, and just give people good, honest advice on about a car, but take them on an entertaining journey as well. So it's just, and also the fact that I don't have to play second fiddle when great cars come out that, you know, Tiffany Dale might get. Now I have got the opportunity to get them for myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, just good, honest fun, and some great cars and some lovely, you know, I'm trying to make it as lovely and beautiful to look at as well.
Just looking back at some of your previous tests and things on YouTube, one that particularly stood out to me for obvious reasons was your 5th gear test of the Alfa 4C.
Yeah.
And I think that the press had a mixed reaction to the 4C, and you did have a little bit of an edge to your conclusion, but it did look like you had a hoot.
Oh, it was a great car on great roads in Wales, just having an utter blast. But I think I'm right. You've obviously watched it more recently than I have, so I think I'm right in saying at the end that I found it was quite a hard car to deal with every day. So maybe I think I'll stand by what I said. And I have spoken to owners of the car, and they have agreed with me to a certain extent, but they also say, you know what, we love it anyway. And that's absolutely what should happen when you buy a car. You fall in love with everything, every single thing about it, including its foibles.
I did an interview a couple of years ago with a Paralympic cyclist, multiple world champion, who had a 4C, and it was his only car.
Oh, wowza!
He used to go shopping in it. He used to take his bikes to the velodrome in Manchester from Cheshire.
Brilliant.
On the back of the 4C.
Oh my God, I'd love to have seen that. That's brilliant.
So another, I guess, Alfa highlight for the club, it'd be interesting to see whether it was for you too, was our 10th anniversary event at Kerbera for the MiTos. How did that come about?
So lovely. I had a phone call, said, would you like to come along? And I said, yes, please, because it involved the cutest cars, wonderful people, which you know, came to fruition, and on a track, Little Kerbera, which was the perfect pocket-sized track for the car. So that was just lovely and fun. And you know what? I love meeting people from the Alfa Club because they have something that I love, and that's passion. And they all adore their cars, and they have different stories as to, you know, how that Alfa came into their life and what it means to them. I just love it. And I managed to go in a couple of cars actually and take them around the circuit. I did ask permission to go, you know, a bit heavy on the right foot before I did it.
Yes, including a diesel, I seem to remember.
Indeed. Well, do you know what? I'll get in anything and give it a go. Totally.
Brilliant. And in terms of National Alpha Day, do you know what you've got in store so far?
Lots of hijinks, good fun, and hopefully meeting lots of people, which I really I can't wait to do, because this will be perhaps one of the first, events like this that I have been to in well over a year. So I was at the Goodwood Speed Week towards the end of last year, and that was, of course, closed to the public. So that was a very different atmosphere. So I'm very much looking forward just to some jollity, seeing some lovely cars, talking to some super people.
One of the things that I've been involved in since the start of lockdown, really, has been sim racing.
Yes.
And we have a truck, well, a large van, I think, with 8 sim racers in it that we'll have at National Alpha Day. Any chance we can get in there to see how you compare against some of our
Defo.
members?
And I will tell you right now, I am useless on those things. So I'd much rather have a real machine under me, but I am right up for that, and I'll definitely set a very poor time that everybody can beat.
So this is the voice of the Sony PlayStation Gran Turismo, whatever it was, edition.
Prologue, indeed.
Prologue,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, my skills on a computer are not, well, we'll see, eh? We'll see.
Have you ever owned an Alpha?
I've never owned an Alfa. No, I haven't. I've driven many. There's the SZ, the RZ, 156 GTA, 147 GTA. I had to write them down. I've driven so many. The Stelvio 8C, but I have great fond memories of a 164 hooning through Milton Keynes.
A Q4 or just a regular one?
Just a regular one. Yeah, just a regular one. Just enjoying the chassis through roundabouts, onto a straight, round another roundabout, onto another straight.
I had a 147 GTA, which was actually a result of going to the dealer to buy a 156 diesel sport wagon.
Yeah.
On the day that they got the 147 GTA in
Oh,
demonstrator, and he said, "Would you like to have a play before you sign the paperwork
wow.
for the 156?" So I came back and said, "Okay, I'll have that one."
Did you really? That's amazing. What a great story.
It wasn't a particularly sensible decision, given that at that point I had 2 kids who were both racing bikes. So the sport wagon was a much more sensible choice, but the GTA was just
couldn't resist it.
No.
Brilliant.
We also had talking of Channel 5, and we were some time ago.
Indeed.
We had an interesting SZ connection with Channel 5. I got an email from John Bentley, probably about 3 years ago now.
Yeah.
Who has regularly appeared on the Gadget Show wearing an SZ t-shirt, an Ian Mostro t-shirt. And he wrote to us and said he'd never driven one, and could we arrange for him to drive one for a show? So he did a feature on podcast microphones, and his the whole setup for the thing was that he was doing a podcast about the SZ.
Brilliant.
It was the most contrived, but it was so much fun, and the look on his face. I mean, the look on the SZ owner's face when he gave him the keys and told him to go off. But
that's brilliant.
He did seem to enjoy himself.
I love it. Well, there's nothing like a bit of, contriving to shoehorn something into a TV show. I remember I was on Top Gear and a new Aston Martin had come out that Tiff was going to drive. And we thought, well, what can we put up against it? Has Jaguar done anything? No, not lately. But what about a Jaguar jet fighter plane? So I ended up riding shotgun in a Jaguar jet fighter plane alongside Tiff Nadal in an Aston Martin, doing a drag race on an airfield. So
and what was the sensible consumer advice? Was it to buy the Aston?
Oh no, go just all out, get the Jag. Totally. So at that point, I was 25 years old, and I remember thinking, gosh, maybe I'm going to switch careers. Maybe I need to be a jet fighter pilot. So I inquired afterwards, and they said you have to be less than 25 years old to start. I was like, no,
a year late.
But that was epic. Yeah, proper 3D stuff. And I wore a G suit just to help keep all of my blood, in the right places. So that was sort of like being squeezed at various points in my body as we pulled over, a lot of G.
During your time as a racing driver, you spent some time as an instructor, didn't you? How did you find that?
Well, I was 17 years old and I'd been racing karts for 5 years, and I had passed my driving test. And to earn some money, I thought, why don't I combine everything that I know, which obviously is not a lot. And I applied to Silverstone to be a racing instructor. So I went for an assessment day, and because I'd raced for 5 years, my knowledge on track was great, and they obviously thought I could speak to people and give instruction and what have you. So I started as an instructor, and I worked at weekends and in the school holiday whilst I was still doing my A levels at school. And I worked with some great people. Richard Burns was an instructor there. Jason Plato was an instructor there. We just had an utter giggle. So I never went to university or college or anything like that. So I like to think that was they were my university days when I went to Silverstone. And it was great fun. And I loved teaching people, particularly women, because they come into a car with no expectations, no inhibitions, nothing. They come in like a sponge, and they so quickly improve because women are perhaps better listeners. Oh, sweeping statement. But I really loved doing that, because the sheer joy on their faces when they got out of the car at the end, because they had improved so much, was wonderful. I love teaching men as well, don't get me wrong, but the women were particularly, you had a guaranteed win-win result.
So the other thing we talked about earlier, we talked about the W Series and the challenges of women in motorsport, and I guess that's a broader problem in the car industry as well. What do you think can be done about that? Because it isn't healthy for any of us to have the degree of male domination that the industry has.
Yeah, I think in all areas of life, it's great to get a balance. I definitely see things changing. For example, if you watch Formula One, you will see more women engineers, more women mechanics, more women, on the pit wall. Claire Williams ran a team. So I think that just seeing people, just connecting visually, will definitely help and go and make an impact on children who are watching. I've got a 10-year-old daughter, and I recently interviewed a woman engineer on a podcast that I do, and my daughter was absolutely captivated. Just hearing female voices, or seeing is a great way to get people engaged. And also, things like engineering or mechanics or running a team, you don't need any special manly skills. We've got the brain power to do it. And that's the wonderful thing about the car industry, is that it doesn't really matter what your background is or who you are. There will be a job that will fit your talents. Absolutely guarantee it.
So you've got a 10-year-old. Is she nagging you for a cart yet?
She does. They have got a pedal cart, so mummy hasn't gone down the engine route yet.
How would you feel about that?
Oh, it's such a difficult one, because she's 10, and just in 2 years' time, she will be the same age as I was when I started racing. And that fills me with utter horror. And I cannot believe that my mum and dad actively encouraged me to go and race, with just like an inch off the ground, if that, at 80 miles an hour. But I'm so glad they did. But my mum says, my mum always came along to the races, but she never watched. She'd sit in the karting van, or she'd go and go have a coffee in the restaurant or something like that. But I just don't know, because when I race, I'm in control. I can weigh up all the potential implications of doing anything. When I'm a spectator, I have no control over that. My younger brother, who started racing after me, he races. And when I go to watch him race, I think that's obviously the closest thing I'm ever going to get at the minute of watching one of my children race, and it's horrific. It's really, your heart is in your mouth all the time. Whereas if I'm in the car, as soon as I'm starting racing, that's it. I'm in the moment. You're focused on that.
And it is getting harder as well. I think it's 12 is almost the time that you start to think about retiring from karting and going to single seaters now.
exactly. Or Ginetta Juniors or something like that.
Yeah, and I think someone was saying it's something like the average driver that gets to, I think it was Formula 2, has spent 4.5 million since the start of their karting career. I mean,
Yeah,
not their own money typically.
yeah,
Some of them are,
yeah.
but it has got. I mean, Lewis made the comment about it being a billionaire's boys club, but he wasn't.
Yeah. When I raced karts, so this was in the 80s, it really was dad and lad, or, you know, in my case, you know, girl and mum and dad. And we all were in the back of a van that we'd driven there. You know, we maintained the karts ourselves. I went back for a fifth gear item to a karting event maybe 5 years ago now. And wowza, we found one dad and lad, one, and they were in a lovely Winnebago, you know. Everyone else is part of a team, like a miniature Formula One team, you know, with sort of, they've got 5 or 6 drivers in one team. Absolutely astonishing. It blew my mind. And it made me a little bit sad and very, very nostalgic for my youth.
I mean, I guess there would be ways of doing that where it helped people with limited budgets. If it was kind of the team finding the sponsorship and cross subsidizing, but my suspicion is that the teams are relying on drivers to bring budgets with them.
Yeah. In my experience, no team has ever come and said, Vicky, come and have a race with us. We're going to help, you know, we're going to fund you 90% of your budget. No, teams have got a business to run, obviously. Yeah. So that, you know, that you have to go with money to ask them to run you.
You've not owned one. If you could own one, then anything that you'd really, really like to have in the garage.
And I would have the Alfa 8C. I just think it's beautiful.
It is. It's a lot prettier than the Maserati that's underneath it.
Yeah, that's the one that I would have.
Was it a hardtop or a Spider you drove?
See, that's the thing. What would I have? I might go for the hardtop. I think that's what I would do. Oh no, okay. No, I might have to. No, I might have to, because then I'd be able to hear the noise a bit better, wouldn't I? With the roof down.
So that's another one of my strange purchasing days.
Oh yeah.
After I'd traded in the 147 GTA got traded in for a sport wagon eventually, because that's what I should have bought in the first place. And then when the kids got to the point where they either weren't riding anymore or had their own cars to drive themselves around, I decided that I didn't need a practical car anymore. So I decided I was going to buy a V6 Brera, Pro Drive Brera.
Lovely.
And I went down to the dealership and I test drove one and loved it, and couldn't quite bring myself to buy something that wasn't practical, having had sport wagons for years. So I decided I'd go away and think about it. And I literally, the following day, I was in a meeting in London. I came out of the tube station and I phoned the dealership up and said, I've decided I'll have that Brera. And he said, we sold it yesterday afternoon.
Wow.
No.
Oh.
He said, we've still got the Spider that was parked next to it. I said, I don't really want the convertible. It's a bit of a, you know, old men in convertibles is a bit sad. And my wife would kill me. He said, oh, go on, drive it. So I went back when I got back from London and test drove it and bought it straight away. And I phoned my wife up and I said, that Brera I was going to buy, I bought a V6 Spider instead. And she said, oh, I always thought you were going to buy a Spider. Much better option than the Brera.
Perfect ending. Brilliant.
Yeah. So.
Oh, great stuff. Good. So didn't get it in the neck when you got home.
I didn't.
The contrary.
No, she's still a fan as well. We've talked about the YouTube channel, which is live now, and the upcoming return of Fifth Gear. Is there anything else our listeners can see you in at the moment?
Well, in a couple of months' time, I am doing a season 2 of the Car Years. So this will be on ITV4. And this is a gorgeous, gorgeous show where I compete, if you like, with a guy called Alex Riley, who does some presenting for The One Show. And he and I pick a car from one year and we champion it. Our own cars, and we tell all the lovely stories about how that car came into being. We've got some beautiful sort of heritage films, and we dress up as well in period costume, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And we then sort of come together, and some judges then make the final decision as to which car they think is best for that specific year. So that's the car years on ITV4, and I've loved filming it. We filmed it in Northern Ireland, and that will be out very soon.
Can you tell us any of the cars, or just any of the years even?
Yes. Well, 1948, I had a Citroen 2CV and Alex had a Range Rover. I've had a Ferrari, the Magnum PI spec Ferrari 308, Ford Sierra RS Cosworth. Oh, yes, please. Whale tail against an M3 that Alex had. All sorts of lovely things.
The 308 GTB rather than the GTS was really the car that got me interested in cars in the first place. I just always thought it was gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I it was quite sobering when I got the 147 GTA, because on paper the performance of the 147 GTA is almost exactly the same. It's about the same 0 to 60 time.
Yeah.
And about the same top end.
Yeah.
But
amazing, isn't it? Supercars back then compared to the power output of cars today is crazy. Because as well, when we look back at like the Ferrari 308, you think, gosh, what a handful, what a machine, what a noise. And then you get in it and it's like, well, yeah, it's quite slow. It's quite heavy, but it's still lovely.
Yes, it's very, very pretty car.
Yeah.
I think that's about all we have time for. Vicky, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time and everything. I really do. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed listening to that as much as I enjoyed making it. I think National Alfa Day is going to be an absolute blast. I had planned to include a plug for ticket sales at this point, but at the time of recording, we had less than 200 tickets still available, with over a week to go. We're trying to increase our allocation, so do keep an eye on the website and the Facebook group. But on current numbers, we should have over 1,700 people and over 1,000 Alfas. We'll be back on Sunday the 4th of July from 1:30 p.m. with another roundtable discussion where we'll look back at the highlights of National Alfa Day. Episode 35 will be available from our website, from YouTube, from Podcast Addict, and dozens of other podcast outlets. So until then, stay safe.